You open your eyes to a room full of faces. A lecture hall hums with whispered conversations. Outside, a suburban sidewalk lines up neat houses, their curtains closed. On your phone, a friend's photo rack shows smiling people at a weekend party. Still, a hollow sits where conversation should be. You are surrounded and unseen. Imagine being in a crowded classroom, walking past neighbors on your street, or scrolling through hundreds of social posts and feeling completely alone. The words land slow, like a pause between heartbeats. Nearly half of adults in the United States report chronic loneliness. For young adults, that number climbs close to 60%. Those figures are not just statistics. They are the soft weight in the chest of students who sit apart in cafeterias, the lingering ache of remote workers at kitchen tables, the quiet of older adults waiting for the next bus home. Loneliness is not merely a mood. It's a public health signal. It speaks to unmet needs and hidden gaps in the structures around us. This channel exists to trace that thread, to explore why you need connection, how modern life frames it, and what research-backed steps can rebuild it. From Weiss to Baumeister and Leary, scholars have described belonging as fundamental, woven into the anatomy of what it means to be human. Prolonged social isolation raises stress hormones, ups inflammation, deepens depression and anxiety. You can see it in different worlds: high school corridors, open-plan offices, college quads, grocery store aisles. In each, people move but they don't always meet. Loneliness, measured across surveys and longitudinal studies worldwide, is on the rise. It shows up across ages, incomes, and postal codes. There are two kinds of loneliness you'll notice as the story unfolds. Social loneliness is the kind that comes from too few regular interactions, an empty calendar of calls, lunches, and get-togethers. Emotional loneliness is deeper, the absence of a close confidant, someone who sees you. You might feel emotionally invisible in a room full of people because the interactions you have are shallow, hurried, or fragmented. Digital platforms increase the volume of your connections, but often reduce depth. Interactions that scroll past your thumb are not the same as someone holding eye contact in the middle of a storm. Researchers like Sherry Turkle highlight how constant connectivity can fragment attention and relationships. Nancy Rappaport's work suggests that in schools, predictable and consistent attention from adults can reduce emotional loneliness in students. The implication is simple and radical. Frequency and predictability of care matter. You see researchers in modest office spaces, community clinics, and crowded university labs. Their work looks and feels human. Interviews, focus groups, long checklists filled after midnight. Why study loneliness? Because it touches learning, health, and civic life. Chronic isolation increases anxiety and depression. It elevates stress responses and inflammation. It changes attention and memory. For students, loneliness affects engagement, attendance, and the ability to learn. For workers, it erodes collaboration and innovation. For communities, it weakens the small moments that knit people together. Shared rituals, neighborly favors, casual conversations that remind us we are part of something larger. But research is not just alarm sounding, it's a map. When you study the problem carefully, patterns appear: small, structured interventions, peer mentoring, teacher check-ins, daily rituals show measurable improvement. Neuroscience finds that predictable social contact calms threat systems in the brain. Longitudinals show repeated contact builds trust. The research moves you from try harder socially into specific, testable changes that shape environments for belonging. Biology of connection. Here you will explore how connection is literally built into your body. You'll learn how social rejection triggers threat systems, how chronic isolation increases cortisol and inflammation, and why the brain treats social pain with similar circuitry to physical pain. Sociology of connection. This playlist dives into the difference between social and emotional loneliness. It explains how relational depth grows through repeated low-stakes interactions, mentoring, and predictable attention. You will see how small, frequent moments of presence add up. Environment of connection. Environments matter. Schools, workplaces, neighborhoods, and cities are not neutral backdrops. They shape your opportunities to connect. This playlist examines zoning, urban design, school schedules, remote work norms, and the ways those structures either encourage or thwart incidental and intentional interactions. Techniques of connection. The final playlist brings it down to practice. What are daily rituals, micro-interactions, and structured programs you can adopt? How do you design classrooms, meeting routines, and neighborhood events to foster belonging? This playlist is practical, rooted in evidence, ready to try. In labs and clinics, you watch maps of neural firing, hear the steady beep of monitors, and meet people whose stories put research into human terms. You are built to connect. Neurobiology explains a lot of the urgency you feel when excluded. Social rejection acts like a threat. Your brain and body respond to social pain with the same hormones and inflammatory cascades that respond to physical threat. Over time, chronic social isolation wears on the body. Cortisol dips and spikes outside healthy ranges. Inflammation rises. Sleep fragments. Cognitive functioning blips. The result is predictable. Higher rates of depression and anxiety, compromised immune responses, and increased risk for chronic diseases. But this wiring also offers hope. Connection is regulatory. Predictable, supportive interactions lower threat responses, reduce inflammation, and restore cognitive resources. When you get consistent attention, a teacher who checks in daily, a team ritual that recenters work, your biology responds. Belonging is not just feel-good rhetoric, it's physiological regulation. Ordinary encounters that become profound when repeated. A teacher pausing to ask about a student's weekend, a coworker offering a consistent morning greeting, a mentor arriving on the same day every week. These are low-cost investments with high returns. Social loneliness can be alleviated by increasing contact, book clubs, study groups, workplace huddles. Emotional loneliness needs predictable depth, someone who remembers, who shows up, who knows your story gradually, not all at once. Weiss and Baumeister and Leary remind us, belonging is a basic human need, but building relational depth often requires structure. Casual acquaintances rarely become close confidants without ritualized contact. Rappaport's interventions in schools, brief, consistent attention, show that even small doses of reliable presence reduce emotional isolation. The mechanism is simple. Repeated interaction builds expectations of support. Expectations build trust. Trust deepens relationship. Step outside into neighborhoods and city centers. Look at streets designed for cars, not people. Walk through campuses planned for efficiency, not incidental conversations. Modern life arranges space and time in ways that limit unexpected encounters. Suburban zoning can isolate households behind garages and fences. Urban density can paradoxically produce anonymity. Remote work shifts your office to a private room where casual water cooler talk disappears. Rural distance stretches friends and family across long drives. Digital platforms, while connecting you to more names, often displace bodily cues and shared contexts that make relationships meaningful. These are structural problems, not personal failures. When loneliness is structural, interventions need to be architectural and policy-oriented, designing public spaces that invite interaction, changing school timetables to allow small group gatherings, creating workplace rituals that replace incidental office chatter. Urban planners, school administrators, and employers can adopt small design strategies that strengthen daily interactions. A sense of belonging doesn't emerge on its own. It requires intentional planning. The behavioral layer is where people and communities put research into action. It's the realm of low-cost routines, repeated experiences, and micro-practices that grow over time. Cultivating belonging takes deliberate effort. It doesn't just happen. The behavioral layer is where individuals and communities act on research findings. It's the place for low-cost rituals, repeated exposure, and micro-practices that scale. Start with routines, morning check-ins, daily stand-ups, evening family reflections. These small repetitive practices create predictable opportunities for connection. Rituals anchor groups through shared words and gestures. A class greeting, a workplace ritual at the start of meetings, a neighborhood weekly potluck. Use micro-interactions intentionally. A brief acknowledgement, eye contact, a name used aloud. A two-sentence question about someone's day shifts interactions from transactional to human. Cell kernels and short activities like gratitude prompts or reflection circles work because they are brief, repeatable, and scalable. Designed for inclusion through structured roles, rotating facilitators in meetings, assigned peer mentors in classrooms, explicit outreach for new community members. These reduce friction and increase the likelihood that someone will show up and feel seen. Intentionality matters. The more predictable the care, the more likely belonging takes root. Imagine a high school that schedules a 15-minute advisory period each morning. A teacher checks in with a small group of students. No grades, no pressure, just a brief space to share wins and troubles. Over a semester, attendance rises and feelings of isolation fall. Picture a remote company that begins each day with a 5-minute "Where are you?" check-in. People share a brief personal update, and a facilitator ensures everyone speaks. The company sees an uptick in collaboration and fewer misunderstandings. Consider a neighborhood that redesigns a corner lot into a shared garden with a bench and a calendar for communal tasks. People who rarely spoke now water the same plants. Those small encounters ripple outward into favors, invitations, and the kind of informal help that makes life easier. These are not magic cures. They are deliberate, replicable practices grounded in evidence, repeated interaction, ritual, and low-bar engagement. Each reduces loneliness by creating reliable pathways to connection. You might think, "I'm too busy," or "I don't know how to start." Time is a real constraint, but belonging doesn't require hours. It requires repetition and predictability. 5 to 15 minutes daily, structured and consistent, produces measurable change. Fear of rejection is another barrier. The research shows that low-stakes interactions, small acknowledgments, and predictable roles reduce the risk of exposure. You don't need to spill your deepest secrets. Start small. A consistent greeting, a shared task, a short ritual. Institutional barriers are tougher, but solvable. Schools can rearrange schedules, workplaces can reframe meetings, planners can create spaces that invite people in. These changes require leadership and modest resources, not wholesale reinvention. You meet a student who used to eat alone. A teacher begins leaving an extra stool at the lunch table, inviting one student to sit with a small group. The student's attendance improves. They join a club. A year later, they mentor a freshman. You meet a nurse who started a 5-minute huddle at the beginning of every shift. It reduced miscommunications and gave staff a shared moment to reset. You meet an older neighbor who started a monthly knitting circle. The group's laughter travels down the street, attracting new members. These stories are not celebrity transformations. They are cumulative, ordinary changes that, over time, shift the culture of a space. Loneliness is not abolished by a single event. It is eroded by thousands of small, deliberate acts. Throughout this series, we draw on foundational work. Weiss's framing of social and emotional loneliness, Baumeister and Leary's articulation of belonging as a human need, Cacioppo and Patrick's research on the health consequences of isolation, Eisenberger's findings on social threat and neural responses, Turkel's critiques of digital life, Rappaport's school-based interventions, and Rose's reflections on modern temporalities. These scholars give us both diagnosis and direction, evidence that belonging is measurable and improvable. Each playlist is designed to guide you deeper. Start with biology to understand how your body responds. Move to sociology to learn how to build depth. Explore environments to see how design shapes opportunity. Finish with techniques for practical routines you can test today. This is not a call for perfection. It's a call for curiosity and small trial and error. Try a 5-minute morning ritual. Introduce a weekly check-in. Host a low-stakes neighborhood event. Track how people show up. Notice the changes. This is not a call for perfection. It's a call for curiosity and small trial and error. Try a 5-minute morning ritual. Introduce a weekly check-in. Host a low-stakes neighborhood event. Track how people show up. Notice the changes. Loneliness has biological, relational, environmental, and behavioral dimensions. Each layer explains different paths forward. Knowing the layers frees you from the false idea that loneliness is personal failure. It is a solvable social problem. Subscribe to follow the playlists that unpack each layer. The science that explains how you are wired, the relationship practices that build depth, the structural designs that shape opportunity, and the rituals that make belonging probable. Engage with the material. Try one small practice this week. Share your results. Tell us what worked and what didn't. When research meets practice, small changes compound. When individuals and institutions design for belonging, ordinary places become sites of care. The work is slow and steady, not flashy, but slow and steady reshapes the everyday. And the everyday is where belonging lives. You see diverse groups in classrooms, offices, parks, and neighborhoods. People pausing, sharing a moment, returning to work with softer shoulders. References fade in for those who want to explore further. Cacioppo and Patrick, 2008. Baumeister and Leary, 1995. Weiss, 1973. Rappaport, 2015. Eisenberger, 2012. Turkel, 2017. Rosa, 2015. The frame holds a quiet promise. Connection can be understood, measured, and rebuilt, one small, predictable interaction at a time.